Grace was 8 when she first fell in love with the sky. It was at the county air show on a crisp autumn afternoon, where the distant roar of engines filled the air, and streaks of white smoke painted daring arcs across the blue. She clutched her father's hand tightly as a sleek, silver aircraft performed a heart-stopping loop. "Do you see that?" Grace whispered, her wide eyes reflecting the endless expanse above. "I see it, pumpkin," her father replied with a chuckle, squeezing her hand. "Pretty amazing, isn't it?" But amazing didn't even begin to describe it. To Grace, it was magic. As the pilots descended after their routines, her father led her to meet one of them, a smiling woman in a navy blue flight suit. Grace could barely contain her excitement as she asked question after question, her tiny voice spilling over with wonder. The pilot knelt to her level, patiently answering each one, her gaze kind and encouraging. "Do you think I could fly like you one day?" Grace asked, her voice trembling with the hope of possibility. The pilot smiled. "Why not? The sky doesn't care who you are, only how much you're willing to reach for it." That day, Grace's heart was set. But her father, always her steadfast supporter, also carried the weight of realism. "You've got the heart of a dreamer, Grace," he said one night as he tucked her into bed, his tone gentle. "But being a pilot isn't easy, especially for women. Not everyone will cheer for you." "I don't need everyone, Dad," she replied, her small fists clutching her blanket. "Just me and the sky." Her father's face softened, and he kissed her forehead. "Then make it count, pumpkin. Work hard, and don't let anyone take your dream away." And she did. From that day forward, Grace devoted herself entirely to the dream of flight. While other kids played with dolls or bikes, she immersed herself in books about planes and weather patterns. By middle school, she could identify aircraft models faster than her science teacher could name the planets. High school brought new challenges. Grace found herself in the aviation club, a lone girl among a sea of skeptical boys. Undeterred, she excelled, building model planes with precision and winning local competitions. At every turn, she met doubt, yet her resolve only hardened, fueled by the memory of that pilot's words and her father's quiet support. When she wasn't studying or tinkering with models, Grace would lie in her backyard, watching planes leave contrails against the vast canvas above. Each line was a promise, each distant hum a call she knew she was destined to answer. Grace's determination grew into a fire no societal barriers could extinguish. Every late night spent poring over textbooks and every double shift at the diner to save for flight school brought her closer to the horizon she longed to conquer. By the time she turned 18, Grace stood at the threshold of her future. The dream she once whispered as a child had become a declaration. She would fly, no matter what. And the sky? It waited for her with open arms. Grace's journey toward the sky was a steady climb, but her feet remained firmly planted in the tangled roots of family life. As the eldest daughter, she had always been the one to blaze trails and shoulder expectations. Yet, beneath her relentless drive to soar, another story was quietly unfolding, a rift with her younger sister, Chloe. Where Grace's life was defined by discipline and determination, Chloe's revolved around the pursuit of fleeting admiration. Chloe was vibrant, charming, and effortlessly likable. At family gatherings, she was the one who lit up the room, her laughter spilling over like champagne. But beneath the surface, Chloe harbored a bitterness she rarely voiced aloud. "Grace is the golden child," Chloe once muttered to a friend, her tone clipped. "She gets praised for studying all the time, but no one notices me. It's like I don't exist unless I'm in her shadow." Their parents tried to maintain balance, but it wasn't always easy. Their father, a man of practical wisdom, admired Grace's grit and often encouraged her dream, while their mother, drawn to Chloe's social charm, celebrated her achievements with equal fervor. Still, Chloe couldn't shake the feeling that her efforts never measured up. The tension peaked one summer during Grace's junior year of high school. She'd been selected for a prestigious aviation summer program, an achievement that came with a glowing article in the local paper. The house buzzed with excitement, yet Chloe, sitting at the kitchen table, stirred her cereal with feigned indifference. "Guess the golden girl strikes again," Chloe said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Grace, who had been helping their father hang the article on the fridge, froze. "What's that supposed to mean?" Chloe dropped her spoon and met Grace's gaze. "It means I'm tired of hearing about how perfect you are." "We get it. You're amazing. Can the rest of us have a moment, or does everything have to be about you?" Their father tried to intervene, but the damage was done. From then on, Chloe's jealousy took on a sharper edge. She began spreading whispers at school, tiny, insidious comments that chipped away at Grace's reputation. "Did you know Grace only got into that program because Dad knows someone on the committee?" she'd say with a casual shrug. "It's not like she's actually the best." Grace heard the rumors, of course. They stung, but she didn't confront Chloe directly. Instead, she buried herself deeper into her studies, her work ethic serving as both armor and escape. Meanwhile, Chloe threw herself into a whirlwind of popularity contests and social media highlights. She flaunted her latest outfits, racked up followers, and seemed to revel in the attention she so desperately craved. Yet, when the cameras were off and the crowds dispersed, she often found herself scrolling through Grace's accolades online, her jealousy simmering. One night, after a particularly tense family dinner, Chloe stormed into Grace's room. "Why do you always have to be so perfect?" she spat, tears brimming in her eyes. Grace, sitting at her desk with aviation manuals spread around her, turned slowly. "I'm not perfect, Chloe. I'm just trying to follow my dream. You don't have to make it a competition." Chloe scoffed, but her voice cracked as she said, "Easy for you to say. You've got it all figured out. I'm just stuck." For a moment, Grace considered closing the gap between them, offering some comforting words. But Chloe's walls were too high and Grace's patience too worn. "I didn't ask to be your rival," Grace said quietly. "But I won't apologize for wanting something more." Their paths continued to diverge from there. Grace pushed forward, her sights fixed on the horizon, while Chloe sought validation in places that offered only fleeting solace. Their dynamic left the family fractured, two sisters standing on opposite shores, neither quite willing to build a bridge. But beneath Chloe's jealousy was a pain Grace could never fully understand. And beneath Grace's focus was a longing for the sisterly bond they had once shared. Grace's life became a relentless ascent. From the moment she walked through the gates of Lincoln High's specialized aviation program, it was as though she had stepped into a world built just for her. In a room full of students driven by the same aspirations, Grace thrived. Her talent for understanding the mechanics of flight was matched only by her ability to command respect in the cockpit during training sessions. Yet, the road wasn't smooth. The challenges came in many forms: grueling coursework, endless simulator hours, and the persistent whispers of doubt, especially from those who thought aviation wasn't a woman's place. "Not bad for a girl," one of her classmates muttered after a particularly flawless mock flight. Grace refused to rise to the bait. She simply smiled and said, "Not bad for anyone, actually," before walking away. Her success continued at the University of Aeronautics, where she emerged as a standout student. Late nights were spent in labs dissecting the minutiae of aircraft design, and early mornings began with simulator drills. Grace had never felt closer to her dream. But as she rose, Chloe's life seemed to stall. Dropping out of community college after her first year, Chloe drifted between part-time jobs and social circles that were more interested in appearances than ambition. Whenever Grace came home to visit, the air was charged with tension. "You're living in a dream, Grace," Chloe snapped one night when the family gathered for dinner. "Some of us have to live in reality." "This is my reality," Grace replied evenly. The gap between them widened, and their parents often found themselves refereeing arguments that neither sister wanted to resolve. By the time Grace earned her wings and joined a regional airline, her life felt like a series of long-awaited victories. Yet, even the most pristine horizons come with unexpected turbulence. During a routine maintenance check on her first official flight as a co-pilot, Grace met Dylan, a maintenance engineer with an easy smile and a knack for problem-solving. He spotted her from across the tarmac as she completed her pre-flight inspection. "First flight nerves," he teased, leaning against a toolbox. Grace grinned. "No nerves, just excitement." Their conversation started casually, but it wasn't long before their shared passion for aviation drew them closer. Dylan admired Grace's discipline and her deep understanding of planes, and she appreciated his quick wit and meticulous approach to his work. Their romance unfolded like a perfect flight plan: shared late-night coffee breaks, spontaneous weekend trips to aviation museums, and long talks about their dreams under starlit skies. Dylan spoke of wanting to become a pilot someday, and Grace encouraged him, offering advice and unwavering support. But as Grace's career soared, Dylan began to wrestle with his own insecurities. Watching her climb the ranks while his own career seemed to stagnate gnawed at him in ways he struggled to articulate. He grew quiet during their conversations and began to withdraw from the things they once enjoyed together. "I just feel like I'm stuck on the ground while you're out conquering the skies," he admitted one night, his voice barely audible. "You're not stuck," Grace replied, placing a reassuring hand on his. "You're building a foundation. Everyone's journey looks different." But Dylan wasn't convinced. He began to resent her success, masking his jealousy behind veiled jokes and half-hearted smiles. Grace tried to bridge the gap, but the weight of his insecurities became harder to ignore. One evening, after a particularly grueling flight, Grace came home to find Dylan waiting for her. His expression was tense, his words careful. "I've been offered a job in another state," he said. "It's a step up, but it means we'll have to do long distance for a while." Grace's heart sank. She wanted to be happy for him, but something about the timing felt off. "We can make it work," she said, forcing a smile. But Dylan's move marked the beginning of the end. Calls became infrequent, and when they did speak, their conversations were stilted, marred by miscommunications and unspoken grievances. Then came the betrayal, a whispered confession from a mutual friend about Dylan seeing someone else in his new city. Grace confronted him, her voice steady but her heart breaking. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she asked. "I didn't want to hurt you," Dylan replied, guilt etched across his face. "You didn't want to hurt me, but you didn't mind lying to me?" Grace walked away that night, her dreams intact but her heart scarred. The sky, vast and unyielding, remained her only constant. As the weeks passed, she threw herself into her work, determined to rise above the pain. Yet, somewhere deep down, she couldn't help but wonder, was her relentless pursuit of the sky always destined to leave her alone on the ground? For a time, Grace believed she had finally found stability in her life. Her career was on a steady climb, and she was building a life on her own terms. But even the clearest skies can hide storms, and Grace was about to face one that would test her resilience like never before. William entered her life with the kind of charm that turned heads. A fellow pilot at her airline, he was confident, charismatic, and deeply knowledgeable about aviation. They started as colleagues, trading tips about long-haul flights and technical checklists. But over time, their friendship deepened into something more. Grace tried to ignore the rumors that trailed William, a reputation for being a ladies' man, and whispers about a complicated past. He assured her those were just baseless stories, exaggerated by gossipers who envied his success. For months, their connection felt real. He admired her determination and independence, and she found comfort in his experience and easygoing nature. They shared dinners during layovers, talked late into the night, and even began to discuss a future together. Grace thought she had finally found someone who understood the life she had chosen. But Chloe had other plans. Chloe had been watching Grace's life from afar, her jealousy simmering as her own life spiraled further out of control. She had struggled to keep a job and had recently been dumped by her boyfriend. Seeing Grace's new relationship filled her with a bitter mix of envy and rage. It started with subtle interference, Chloe dropping comments at family dinners about William's supposed flirtations or hinting that Grace was too busy for a proper relationship. But it didn't stop there. One evening, after Grace returned from a late flight, Chloe showed up at her door in tears. I didn't know who else to tell, Chloe sobbed, clutching her stomach. I'm pregnant, Grace. And it's William's. Grace's world tilted. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. That's impossible, she said, her voice shaking. You're lying. Chloe's tears only intensified. Why would I lie about something like this? Ask him yourself. Grace confronted William the next day, her voice trembling with anger and heartbreak. Is it true? Did you sleep with my sister? William hesitated, and in that hesitation, Grace saw the truth. I didn't know she was your sister, he admitted finally, his words stumbling out in a rush. It was a mistake, Grace. I didn't mean for it to happen. The betrayal shattered her. The two people she trusted most had conspired against her in the most devastating way. But Grace wasn't the type to let deception slide. She demanded answers, and as the days unfolded, the truth came to light. Chloe had fabricated the pregnancy, desperate for attention and validation in the shadow of her sister's success. William, weak and complicit, had allowed himself to be manipulated, and in doing so, had destroyed any chance of salvaging his relationship with Grace. When Grace learned of Chloe's lies, she felt a mix of anger and sorrow. But the damage was done, and the fallout rippled through the family. Their parents were horrified, torn between their daughters, while Chloe played the victim to anyone who would listen. Grace's breaking point came when Chloe tried to publicly tarnish her reputation, claiming Grace had overreacted and painted herself as a martyr. Fed up, Grace made a decision that shocked everyone. She took Chloe and William to court. The legal battle was grueling. Grace sought to hold them accountable not just for the lies, but for the damage they had caused to her career and reputation. It was a bold move, one that left no doubt about her unwillingness to tolerate betrayal, even from her own family. The courtroom became a battleground where Grace's strength and resolve were on full display. She stood firm, recounting the events with clarity and composure, refusing to let Chloe's theatrics or William's excuses shake her. In the end, the court ruled in Grace's favor. Chloe's fabrications were exposed, and William faced professional repercussions that tarnished his standing in the aviation community. For Grace, the victory was bittersweet. The court couldn't mend the broken trust or erase the pain, but it gave her a sense of closure. As she walked out of the courthouse, the weight of the past months pressing on her, Grace looked up at the sky. It was overcast, the clouds thick and heavy, but she saw a glimmer of light breaking through. Her heart still ached, but she knew one thing for certain. The horizon was hers to chase, and no betrayal could ground her dreams. The fallout from the betrayal left no life untouched. Like a lightning strike, Chloe and William's choices sent shockwaves through their lives, ripping apart illusions and leaving harsh truths exposed. For Chloe, life quickly unraveled. The fabricated pregnancy, exposed during the court proceedings, destroyed the last shreds of credibility she clung to. Friends distanced themselves, reluctant to associate with someone whose actions had been splashed across public records. Financially, Chloe was unmoored. She had leaned heavily on her parents for support, but their patience wore thin. The shame of her actions left them unwilling to defend her, and when her pleas for help went unanswered, Chloe was forced to fend for herself. Part-time jobs and shared apartments became her new reality, a stark contrast to the glamorous image she had once worked so hard to cultivate. Estranged from Grace and with little sympathy from her parents, Chloe often found herself reflecting on the choices that led her there. But regret is a poor salve, and Chloe struggled to take responsibility fully, slipping between moments of remorse and bitterness. William's downfall was equally swift. In an industry where trust and reputation are paramount, his actions left a stain that couldn't be ignored. The whispers of his unprofessional conduct grew louder until they reached the ears of his superiors. Stripped of his flight certifications and with no path to redemption in aviation, William was forced to leave the industry entirely. The man who once soared among the clouds now found himself grounded, taking up odd jobs and confronting the stark reality of a life undone by his own weakness. In contrast, Grace emerged from the storm with a quiet strength. While the betrayal left scars, she refused to let them define her. She poured herself into her career, taking on new challenges with the same determination that had fueled her since childhood. Her efforts did not go unnoticed. Grace was promoted to captain faster than most of her peers, her calm leadership and technical expertise earning her respect among colleagues. Her name appeared in industry publications as a rising star, and young aviators began to look up to her as a role model. But Grace's growth wasn't limited to her professional life. The pain she endured also taught her the value of boundaries and self-care. She sought therapy to process her emotions and leaned on a close circle of friends who supported her unconditionally. One evening, after a long-haul flight, Grace found herself staring out at the twinkling city lights from her hotel balcony. She thought about Chloe and William, not with anger, but with a sense of closure. She had learned to forgive, not to absolve them of their actions, but to free herself from the weight of resentment. Chloe and William had made their choices, and now they lived with the consequences. Grace, however, refused to be tethered to their mistakes. In time, Grace began to open her heart again. She met people who valued her for who she was, not just for what she had achieved. Slowly but surely, she rebuilt her personal life, balancing her love for aviation with the connections that grounded her in the best ways. At family gatherings, the air was different. Chloe no longer made appearances, her relationship with their parents reduced to sporadic phone calls and occasional updates through mutual acquaintances. Grace's parents, who had always tried to navigate the divide between their daughters, treated Grace with a newfound respect, though the wounds within the family remained tender. One holiday evening, Grace sat with her father on the porch, watching the sky turn from gold to indigo. "You've been through a lot, Pumpkin," he said, his voice steady. "But you've come out stronger than I ever imagined." Grace smiled faintly, her eyes tracing the path of a distant plane. "Sometimes I think the hardest storms teach us how to fly better." Her father nodded, pride etched in his expression. "The sky's still yours, Grace. It always will be." And as Grace looked up, she felt it, the pull of the horizon, the promise of endless possibility. The turbulence she had faced was part of her journey, but it would never define her destination. She was ready to chart her own course, one free of shadows and betrayals, soaring toward a future that was truly her own. 2 years after the storm that changed everything, Grace stood on the runway at dawn, the hum of engines and the faint scent of jet fuel surrounding her like a familiar embrace. Today was no ordinary flight. It marked her first as chief pilot, a position she had worked tirelessly to earn. The sun rose in hues of gold and amber, casting a glow on the sleek fuselage of the aircraft she now commanded. For Grace, the moment felt like a culmination of every late-night study session, every doubter she had proven wrong, and every mile she had flown in pursuit of her dreams. Her professional achievements were only part of the picture. Grace had also found a sense of balance she hadn't realized she was missing. David, a fellow aviator and flight instructor, had entered her life quietly but with steady warmth. Unlike William, David admired Grace's independence and success, supporting her without envy. Their shared passion for aviation brought them together, but it was their mutual respect and understanding that deepened their bond. On their first date, they had spent hours at an airfield, marveling at vintage planes and talking about the places they dreamed of visiting. Now, those dreams were becoming a reality. David often joked that their relationship was a perfect co-pilot arrangement, each of them guiding and supporting the other through life's turbulence. Grace's family dynamics had shifted as well. Chloe, once consumed by jealousy and insecurity, had started to make tentative steps toward self-awareness. Her struggles had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself, and she had sought therapy to untangle years of resentment. One evening, Chloe called Grace, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," Chloe began, "but I need you to know I'm trying. I've made so many mistakes, Grace, and I don't expect you to trust me again overnight. I want to be better." Grace listened quietly, her emotions a mix of caution and hope. "I'm glad you're working on yourself, Chloe," she said finally. "But rebuilding trust takes time. I hope we can find a way forward, one step at a time. The road to reconciliation was slow, but the effort was there. Chloe started small, sending Grace articles about aviation she thought might interest her or dropping an occasional text to ask about her flights. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. For Grace, the future felt wide open. Her days were filled with flights to new destinations, inspiring young pilots, and planning her next adventure with David. Every so often, she would revisit the memories of her past, not with pain, but with gratitude for how far she had come. One crisp autumn afternoon, she stood on the balcony of her apartment, looking out over the city as planes crisscrossed the sky. The horizon seemed endless, a symbol of the life she had built through resilience and determination. Grace smiled, her thoughts alighting on the metaphor that had always guided her. Clear skies, she thought. That's what I've found. The horizon stretched before her, promising new adventures and brighter days. Grace turned back inside, ready to embrace whatever came next, knowing that she had the strength to face any turbulence and the wings to soar beyond it.